The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble foyer as Elena Santos clutched her worn canvas bag, her hands trembling so violently she could barely maintain her grip. Behind her, Margaret Whitmore's voice cut through the air like a blade, each word dripping with contempt and certainty. "Security will escort you out. Consider yourself fortunate I'm not pressing charges, though perhaps I should. Stealing from the family that gave you everything, you people are all the same." Elena's dark eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of Margaret Whitmore and her guests who had gathered in the foyer like spectators at an execution. She had worked in this mansion for 3 years, caring for 7-year-old Sophie with a devotion that transcended duty, and now she was being paraded out like a common criminal over a diamond bracelet she had never touched. The security guard's hand hovered near her elbow, not quite touching but making his purpose clear. Elena's mind raced, searching desperately for the right words, the perfect defense, but what could she say? The bracelet had been found in her room, tucked inside her pillowcase where anyone could have placed it. Her word, the word of a 42-year-old immigrant nanny, meant nothing against Margaret Whitmore's accusation. "Please, Mrs. Whitmore," Elena whispered, her accent thickening with emotion. "I would never. Sophie, she knows I would never. Don't you dare speak my daughter's name." Margaret's perfectly manicured hand rose in a gesture of dismissal. "Sophie is being kept in her room precisely so she doesn't have to witness this disgrace. The therapist says the betrayal from someone she trusted will require months of counseling to overcome." Elena felt something inside her chest crack and splinter. Sophie, her sweet, brilliant, lonely little girl who had clung to Elena's hand during thunderstorms, who had whispered her dreams and fears while Elena braided her hair, who had started calling her Mama Lena when no one else was listening. The thought of Sophie believing she had stolen from the family, believing Elena had betrayed her, was more painful than any accusation. As the security guard finally took her arm, a small voice pierced the tension like a silver bell. "She didn't do it." Every head turned toward the grand staircase. Sophie stood at the top in her white nightgown, her blonde hair tangled from sleep, her blue eyes blazing with a fury that seemed far too large for her small frame. She gripped the banister with both hands, her knuckles white. "Sophie, darling, go back to your room," Margaret said, her voice shifting to the artificially sweet tone she used when guests were present. "This doesn't concern you." "Yes, it does." Sophie's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "Elena didn't steal your stupid bracelet. I know she didn't because I took it." The foyer erupted in gasps and murmurs. Elena's legs nearly gave out. Margaret's face flushed crimson, cycling rapidly through shock, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. "Sophie Whitmore, you will go to your room this instant," Margaret commanded, but Sophie was already running down the stairs, her bare feet slapping against marble. She threw herself at Elena, wrapping her arms around the nanny's waist with desperate strength. "I'm sorry, Mama Lena. I'm so sorry. I put the bracelet in your room. I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted." Her words dissolved into sobs. Elena dropped to her knees, gathering the little girl close, her own tears finally breaking free. "Shish, Mia Moore, it's okay. Everything is okay. How dare you?" Margaret hissed, striding forward and trying to pull Sophie away. "You've manipulated my daughter, turned her against her own family." "No." Sophie wrenched away from her mother's grasp with surprising force. "Elena didn't do anything. You never listen, Mother. You never listen to anyone." Robert Whitmore emerged from his study, drawn by the commotion. The technology mogul looked haggard, his tie loosened, his eyes carrying the permanent exhaustion of a man who had built an empire at the expense of everything else. "What's going on here? Your daughter," Margaret said, her voice icy, "is making wild accusations to protect the help." "I'm not making it up." Sophie whirled on her father, and Elena saw raw desperation in the child's face. "I took the bracelet and I hid it in Elena's room because I wanted you both to spend time looking for it together. I thought if you had to search the house, work on something together, maybe you'd remember you used to love each other. Maybe you'd stop fighting all the time. Maybe you'd remember I exist." The silence that followed was suffocating. Elena watched the color drain from both parents' faces as Sophie's words hit their mark. Margaret's hand fluttered to her throat. Robert seemed to age 10 years in an instant. "I wanted you to have to talk to each other," Sophie continued, her voice breaking. All you do is yell or ignore each other. You ignore me. Elena is the only one who actually sees me, who talks to me, who cares about what I think and feel. And now you're sending her away and I'll have no one, and I can't. She couldn't finish. Her small body shook with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and deep. Elena pulled her close again, murmuring soft Spanish words of comfort, rocking her gently as she had done countless times during nightmares and fears. Robert moved first, kneeling beside them with uncharacteristic uncertainty. Sophie, sweetheart, I had no idea you felt. Of course you didn't, Sophie said, her voice muffled against Elena's shoulder. You're never here, and when you are here, you're on your phone or fighting with mother or sleeping. The only time you asked about my day in the last month was when Elena reminded you at dinner. Each word was a small detonation. Elena glanced up to see tears streaming down Robert's face, his composure completely shattered. Margaret stood frozen, her carefully constructed mask of society perfection cracking to reveal something raw and wounded underneath. I thought. Margaret's voice was barely audible. I thought you were happy. Your tutors say you're excelling. You have everything a child could want. I don't want things, Sophie said, finally lifting her head to look at her mother. I wanted you, both of you, together, like we used to be. Elena knew she should stay silent, that this was a family matter beyond her role, but watching Sophie's pain, she couldn't stop herself. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, if I may speak. She felt both parents' eyes turn to her, and she steadied her voice. Sophie, she is a child who has everything money can buy except what matters most. She is brilliant and funny and kind, and she is drowning in loneliness in this beautiful house. I have watched her wait by the window for hours for one of you to come home. I have held her while she cries because she thinks it is her fault you fight. She took that bracelet not because she is bad, but because she is desperate. How dare you presume to know what my daughter needs, Margaret began, but her heart wasn't in it. The words were habit, armor she had worn for so long she had forgotten it was removable. I presume because I am with her every day, Elena said gently but firmly. I see her practice conversations in the mirror, hoping to say the right thing to make you stay at dinner. I watch her create art and write stories she will never show you because she believes you are too busy to care. I am not her mother, Mrs. Whitmore, but I love her as if she were my own, and it breaks my heart to watch her fade a little more each day. The truth hung in the air, undeniable and devastating. Margaret's legs seemed to give out, and she sank onto the bottom stair, her perfect posture finally crumbling. Robert put his face in his hands. We've failed her, he whispered. God help us, we've completely failed her. I don't think you failed me on purpose, Sophie said, her voice small but clear. She had stopped crying, and now she looked between her parents with something like hope flickering in her eyes. I think you just forgot. You got so busy being mad at each other that you forgot about being happy together. About being a family. Margaret reached out with a shaking hand, and this time, Sophie took it. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so terribly sorry. I'm sorry too, Robert said, moving closer. I thought providing for you, giving you the best schools and opportunities, was enough. I was wrong. Sophie looked at Elena, and in that moment, the nanny saw both gratitude and a question. Elena nodded slightly, giving permission, giving blessing. Sophie needed her parents now, not a surrogate. This was their chance to rebuild what had broken. Can we start over? Sophie asked. Can we try to be a real family again? Robert pulled both his wife and daughter into his arms, and for the first time since Elena had started working for the Whitmores, she saw them embrace without stiffness or obligation. It wasn't perfect. 3 years of distance couldn't be healed in a moment, but it was a beginning. Elena stood quietly, stepping back toward the door. The security guard had long since vanished. The gathered guests had dispersed, probably already spreading this story through their social circles. None of that mattered. Sophie was where she belonged, in her parents' arms. Where are you going? Sophie's voice stopped her. Home, Amor. You and your family, you need time together. No. Sophie extracted herself from her parents and ran back to Elena, taking both her hands. You can't leave. You're part of this family too. Sophie's right, Robert said, standing. He looked at Elena with new eyes, really seeing her perhaps for the first time. "Mrs. Santos, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. We accused you of theft when you've given our daughter something we failed to provide, genuine love and attention. More than that, you've held our family together when we were determined to tear it apart." "I am just the nanny," Elena said softly. "You're not just anything," Margaret said, joining them. Her eyes were red, her makeup ruined, and she looked more human than Elena had ever seen her. "You've been the mother Sophie needed when I was too proud and too hurt to be present. You've been more family to her than we have. If you can forgive us, if you can stay, we would be honored." Elena looked at Sophie's hopeful face, then at the two adults who were finally starting to understand what they had nearly lost. She thought of her own daughter back in Guatemala, now grown with children of her own, who had encouraged Elena to take this job so she could send money home. She thought of how Sophie had filled some of the emptiness that distance had created, and how Sophie had found in her a safe harbor in this storm of wealth and emotional neglect. "I will stay," Elena said. "But things must change, not just for Sophie, but for all of you." "Anything," Robert said immediately. "Family dinners. Every night when you are home. No phones, no work. Time together. Also, Sophie needs you at her school concerts, her art shows. She needs you to know her teachers' names and her friends' names. She needs you to be her parents, not just her providers." "Done," Margaret whispered. "Whatever it takes." Over the following months, the Whitmore house transformed. It wasn't easy or instant. Robert still traveled for business, and Margaret still had her social obligations, but they carved out time for Sophie with fierce dedication. Family dinners became sacred. Weekends were protected. They started attending therapy together, all three of them, working through the wounds that had accumulated. Elena watched Sophie bloom like a flower finally receiving sun. The little girl's artwork became brighter, her laughter more frequent. She still came to Elena for comfort and conversation, but now she went to her parents too, and they were there to receive her. One evening, 6 months after that terrible night in the foyer, Elena was preparing to leave for the day when Margaret stopped her in the kitchen. "Elena, I want to thank you," Margaret said, her voice soft. "Not just for staying, but for having the courage to tell us the truth we needed to hear. You could have stayed silent, kept your job, but you risked everything for Sophie." "I did not think about risk," Elena admitted. "I only thought about what Sophie needed." "That's exactly why you're remarkable." Margaret paused, clearly wrestling with something. "Robert and I have been talking, and we've made some decisions about our future. We're scaling back our commitments, both of us. We're putting family first, and we want to make sure you're compensated fairly for everything you've done." "Mrs. Whitmore, that is not. Please, let me finish." Margaret smiled, and it reached her eyes in a way Elena had rarely seen. "We're tripling your salary, and we've set up a college fund for your grandchildren in Guatemala. We're also making you an official part of Sophie's care team, not just a nanny but a family coordinator. You'll help us make decisions about her education, her activities, her well-being." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "That is too much. It's not even close to enough," Robert said, entering the kitchen with Sophie at his side. "You saved our family, Elena. You helped us see what we were losing before we lost it forever. How do you put a price on that?" Sophie pulled something from behind her back, a framed drawing showing 4 figures holding hands in front of a house, the sun bright overhead. The figures were labeled Mama, Papa, Sophie, and Mama Lena. "This is our real family," Sophie said, handing the drawing to Elena. "All of us together." Elena took the frame with trembling hands, her vision blurred by tears. She had come to this country, this house, looking for work to support her own family. She had found so much more, a second chance to mother, a little girl who needed her, and the opportunity to help heal wounds she hadn't caused but refused to ignore. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you all for letting me be part of this." They stood together in that kitchen, so different from the cold foyer where Elena had nearly been cast out in disgrace. They were an unlikely family, bound not by blood but by choice, by crisis, by the courage of a 7-year-old girl who refused to let the people she loved destroy themselves. In the end, the diamond bracelet had been exactly what Sophie intended, a catalyst for truth. Sometimes the most valuable things we lose aren't jewels or money but connection, presence, and love. And sometimes it takes the wisdom of a child and the bravery of someone with nothing to lose to help us find our way back to what matters most. Elena hung Sophie's drawing in her room that night, right above her bed where she could see it every morning. 4 people holding hands. A family, imperfect and hard-won, but real in all the ways that counted. Some families are given to us, but others we build through dedication, honesty, and the revolutionary act of truly seeing each other. And that, Elena thought as she turned off the light, was worth more than all the diamonds in the world.